to order, and let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My apologies for the delay this morning, stuck in traffic. Haled, can't wait for BRT. All right, I'd like to do approval of the minutes from last month's meeting. I make a motion we approve the minutes from the meeting. Just need a second.
Second?
Okay.
Sorry.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay. We'll go ahead and jump into the briefing items. Andy, with the financial results.
Thank you. If we move to page 4 of the report, we'll start with revenue, passenger revenue for the month. September, as you'll see in this report and throughout others, was a very strong month with respect to ridership. And that strength in ridership is resulting in a good month with respect to passenger revenue. You can see September is a month where school is fully in session, so we're seeing student revenue pick up. Passenger revenue is at $1.175 million, and access revenue was at $56,000. Next slide, please. Oh, great. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong sheet here. Thank you. When we look at expenses, our expense profile is very similar to what we've seen over the last quarter. We'll get into details a little bit, but for the most part, expenses continue to track as they have over the last quarter. Next slide. Some of the key drivers that we have here for the month of September, total revenue is at $24.1 million, which is favorable to budget by $4.3 million. Total expenses at 11.8 is favorable by just under $1 million, or 7.5%. That results in a surplus of 12.4, which is favorable to budget by 5.2 million. Ridership, as we discussed earlier, was very strong, 1.2 million, which is favorable to budget by 224,000, or about 23%. A couple things to note on the revenue side. We already discussed operating revenue at 1.7 million, favorable to budget by about 20%. Non-transportation, you've all seen this every month this fiscal year, is well ahead of budget due to the investment income that we have in our reserve. That was favorable to budget by about $700,000. County sales tax at $9.8 million was just barely unfavorable to budget by about $100,000. On the P&L, we'll show kind of how that's tracked for the year. If you recall, this budgeted number comes from the University of Cincinnati study. That number has been sometimes slightly ahead of actual and sometimes slightly behind actual, but for the year has turned out to be a very accurate prediction of our county sales tax revenue. Federal grants favorable by $3.4 million, and this is essentially the true up of all of the final coronavirus and ARP funds. If you remember in the August meeting, Larry had mentioned that this September would be the last month where we would use federal ARP funds, and this is the final drawdown and final true up of all of those funds, and that's reflected in the P&L as well. From the expense side, only one surprise. I think on the wages and benefits, we're right on budget, just unfavorable by 0.5%. Fuel and lubricants were 0.2% favorable to budget, so right on plan. Parts and supplies were favorable by $237,000. If you recall, almost every report this fiscal year, parts and supplies have been over budget due to supply chain and cost of parts. I think from a timing perspective, we're under budget this month, which helps us for our year-end goals, but that's the only kind of deviation from the norm, if you will. All other continues to be favorable to budget, and that is, again, timing of outside services and capitalization of some of our BRT consultant work. If you turn to the next page, maybe zoom in a little bit here on P&L, the one line that I would like to cover is the county sales tax. If you see, we were $100,000 under the plan for the month and only $537,000 ahead of plan for the entire year, which is 0.6%. So when we think about 2024 and using those UC numbers to set the baseline for our budget with respect to sales tax, that is seems to be a very strong predictive tool, and we should have confidence in that as we move forward. Other than that, if there are any questions, that concludes the finance report for September.
Reading this right, that we're 225,000 favorable to budget on ridership for the month.
For the month, correct.
Earmarking that.
Yeah. And our planning and development folks will go into detail during the Planning and Operations Committee about ridership and where we're seeing that growth. All right, moving on. Investment summary. Again, this report looks a lot like the report that you saw last month. Our overnight account, as you know, interest rates have risen pretty rapidly over the past few months. So we're seeing the best return in our short-term investments and overnight account at 5.6%. Some of our longer-term investments are starting to mature, and we've met with our advisor to see if we can take some of the money in the overnight account and invest it in longer-term securities that have a higher yield than what we're seeing right now. So that calculation and analysis is going on right now. But net for the month, we had a 4.9% return and $188.5 million in the reserve. The bottom half of the page, you've seen this again. These are the obligations that we have against that reserve: BRT, capital match, 2 months of operating expense from a rainy day perspective, leaving a net unrestricted at $47.6 million. And if you recall, again, this is another effect of September being the last month of the ARP money. We're only projecting a surplus in the last quarter of $319,000, right? You've seen millions of dollars in that projected surplus over the last 9 months. And with this month, we're only projecting $319 for the last quarter. We'll probably be over that. But that leaves you at the end of the year with an unrestricted at $48 million. Any questions about the investment fund? Great. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to improve the investment funds. Can I get a second? Second.
My microphone. Second.
All right, thanks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, hearing none, the investment of funds is approved. We'll move on to the next item.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
All right, we'll go ahead and give a report on our Riverfront Transit Center audit results, as well as an update of where we are with internal audit processes and procedures. So just to give a brief agenda update, we'll talk about our Riverfront Transit background, overview of our objectives, scope and methodology, observation results, and then we'll give updates on things that are happening in the world of internal audit. So just to give a quick background, those who don't know, City of Cincinnati owns the property beneath 2nd Street in downtown Cincinnati, and they granted SORTA and non-exclusive easement over that property. So we're permitted to manage and operate that, including the west and east parking areas. So we've outsourced the management of the RTC and parking services to ABM, and we have a revenue sharing agreement with them where a percentage of the gross revenue is shared each month, and we get an 18% incentive fee, after monthly expenses and capital spending. Moving forward. You can go ahead to the next slide. So basically, the primary purpose of our audit was to assess the Riverfront Transit Center agreement with the city and determine if policies, practices, and procedures were being followed and adequate to ensure revenue was appropriate. Some of the key areas we looked at were insurance indemnification, safety and security, employee education, human resources, invoice review, vendor setup, compensation fees, and environmental hazards. Moving forward. So scope methodology we use, we interviewed key personnel with our staff and also the ABM. We reviewed contracts. We visited the parking lot and observed the collection and revenue process, in real time. We examined cash receipts, and any of the documents and receipts and support we obtained was from fiscal year 22. So overall, as far as the revenue piece, no major issues there, but we did observe a couple of internal controls and processes that could be improved moving forward. First thing we noticed is that the contract with ABM expired May 31st. And so, we want to manage and make sure to stay up on that to put a temporary amendment in place and follow up to get a long-term agreement just to ensure that we're getting the best revenue sharing agreement the market has. And so the procurement team is currently working with ABM to get that updated, and we'll have a long-term solution in the near future. Another observation we found was with the safety and security of the facility, could use improvement. At the time, we were going through an overhaul of the security cameras to cover more areas, but because of some issues with the internet provider, there was a lack of bandwidth, so a lot of the cameras that were being used didn't have full functionality. We also kind of observed the third-party security team that was monitoring the cameras, and at the time, some of them were, not paying attention to the screen, doing homework. So it's one of those things that we brought that up to make sure that ABM is following up with the third party they contracting to ensure that the best safety and security processes are being followed at the facility. The third observation was with the agreement between the City of Cincinnati and SORTA provides that we provide annual reports to them, which includes the annual maintenance report, transit asset management report, and also the annual financial report. At the time of review, those reports had not been submitted to the city, so we just want to make sure management is aware of that. And as a follow-up, the management decided that they're going to have the report submitted by the end of December. We will note that the annual financial report was submitted to the City of Cincinnati on September 28th, so that has been rectified. As far as we also looked at vendors that were being paid on behalf of the RTC as far as expenses, capital spending, and those type of things. And what we did notice is that some of the information for those vendors were not being held or retained as far as the W-9 ACH form, those type of documentation. So we reached out and recommended that, as we move forward with managing our vendor master file, we make sure we retain the copies of those forms. And also moving forward, the procurement team will be working to make sure all that information is uploaded when new vendors are set up, in the system. Moving forward to the next page, please. We also looked at the emergency action plan that was put in place by ODOT, which specified a recommendation of installing or practice installing the flood doors annually, just to ensure, they are aware of how to do that in case of an emergency. And based on observation, we noticed that the last time that those were installed was February of 2020. So our recommendation was to make sure that SORTA works with ODOT to create a schedule to practice installing those flood doors on an annual basis, just to ensure if it ever does come to a flood, they're aware how to do it and can do it fast and efficiently, just in case to prevent any further loss of damage at that facility. And the last observation that required a response was we also looked at the certificate of assurance that the city requires SORTA to have. And one of the things that was missing from that was providing SORTA as the additional assured on the certificate of insurance. Would also, if SORTA had an agreement with the third party is also supposed to list SORTA and the city as additional assured on those policies as well. At the time of review, those items were missing from both certificates. But we've reached out to both parties, and they have updated those certificate insurance as of today. And the last, just one more, back it up real quick. Thank you very much. And the last one, this is one that doesn't require management response, but we brought it up as a item to be aware. We noticed the facility and the state of repairs and the conditioning, and we just brought it up as an observational that the city and SORTA wants to work together to make sure those items are being addressed. At the time, we didn't see anything as a huge risk or even a low-level risk, but continued neglect of those type of maintenance and repair items could cause the future of potential risk that SORTA would have to observe. And I think if you had questions about the state of the facility and the repairs, Jeff Monstock will be happy to speak to you about those as well. But I'm going to pause right there and see if there's any questions about any of the audit observation or results at this time.
On the state of the facilities, who are we responsible for that, or is the city responsible for that? Okay. Okay.
City's responsible. We hire the contractors to do the repairs,
And then
but it's paid for out of the revenue from the parking.
Okay. Thanks.
And typically, if it's under 50,000, we kind of can go and get those repaired. Anything above that amount, the city has to approve of it first and then go through that. So it's really more of them to make those calls. And just to add a little bit, some of the repairs that are needed at the facility, there's impacted by non-RTC above like the sidewalk area. So the city has to really repair those first on their hand before we could even start repairing some items on the inside as well.
Thank you.
No problem. But if no further questions, I kind of want to thank the team, Jeff, the Fleet Facilities, John Ravazio's team for a successful audit. And moving forward, we like to see some of those items get cleared up, and that'll go into my next slide on how we'll kind of follow up with observations. So just a quick update. We were looking to have an audit management software in place. Currently, those we did award the project to a vendor, but at this time they haven't finalized the contract, so we're kind of up in a standstill on that. But as far as the follow-ups, what we're going to be implementing moving forward in the internal audit department is after every engagement, within 6 to 12 months, we'll provide a brief memo report. We'll be interviewing key personnel to make sure that the items that we identified in our reports have been cleared up, and we want to hold everybody accountable to making sure we're moving forward on the things that we're observing, and that you, as a board, are happy with the progress that we're making as a team here. And just to give you where we're going with the current up and coming audits, right now we're in the process of doing our accounts payable with the plan to be done in Q4. That's okay, I could keep going without the slide. And then we're also, just yesterday we started our investment audits with the plan to be completed by the end of this year. And then the staffing and IT audits will be starting in Q4 as well. Those will probably be wrapped up Q1. The IT may be done by the end of this year. And those are all being, if you see the asterisk, been done by Clark Schaefer. And then just added to the list is the Transit Infrastructure Fund audit, which we have to do every 3 years. So we'll be starting that audit sometime in Q4 with the expectation of being completed in Q1 of 24. With that, I'd like to open up for any other questions about the plan or audit results. If there being none, I'd like to thank you, everyone, for a wonderful report.
Thank you, Norman. All right,
Okay.
Andy?
Thank you. We'd like to talk a little bit about the Everybody Rides Metro Foundation and really our approach and staff recommendation in terms of the financial approach to the Everybody Rides Metro Foundation in 2024. You're all familiar with ERM and what it does. This foundation created by SORTA back in 2006, and the foundation was essentially created to work with social service agencies to provide reimbursement for bus passes for their clients. What we have, next slide. Currently, the contribution method, I guess I'll take one step back. The umbrella here that we're talking about is looking at, from a technical perspective and a legal and accounting perspective, how SORTA funds the ERM program and really the financial flows of the ERM program, what has been done since the levy has passed, and a recommendation to make a slight adjustment for 2024. So when we look at what's been done over the last 3 years, SORTA, in its annual budget, makes a contribution of $500,000 toward the ERM program, right? $80,000 is held back within the SORTA budget for administrative expenses, and $420,000 was deposited into the 501c3 account, right? And that came into the account at about 1/12 each month. The $420,000 that was in that account was used to reimburse social service agencies for bus passes, right? So the use of those funds is consistent with the authority that SORTA has in terms of providing bus service and bus passes and transportation to our community, right? In looking at this, the question has come up from a technical perspective, should the SORTA board actually put those dollars into a private 501c3 nonprofit account, or should those dollars stay within the SORTA budget and reimbursement come directly from SORTA for past reimbursement, right? When talking about it with our legal counsel and our financial staff, we would make the recommendation to this board and this finance committee that, next slide, please, in 2024, the SORTA board, if they're so inclined to continue the program at existing levels, would contribute $420,000 to the Everybody Rides Metro program within the SORTA budget. Those funds would be used, again, directly to reimburse social service agencies for bus passes. The other program costs, like the overhead and staff time and marketing and communications and all that, would be funded out of the SORTA budget as part of our administrative overhead. So the net impact to the social service agencies and the possible reimbursement rates and possible reimbursement amounts wouldn't change. It's just where the check was coming from and where the money was allocated to would stay within the SORTA budget. It would take away kind of this step process where it goes from the SORTA budget to a private 501c3, and then just to be paid out in reimbursement in terms of bus passes to those social service agencies. What that would potentially mean, and again, this is a broad framework that we'd like to present to this committee and obviously also present to the ERM board to make a transition in the 2024 timeframe. So we don't have to make every decision today, but some direction from this committee would be beneficial. So what we would propose in 2024 is that the ERM board and the ERM program first spend down those 501c3 dollars that are in the account. We're projecting about a $320,000 carryover in that account for 2024. Once those funds had been spent down, then reimbursements would begin to come from the SORTA budget directly, right? Anytime after that 501c3 balance is zero, essentially you wouldn't have to have the 501c3 board and all of the reporting and the financial reporting and commitments that go along with managing a separate 501c3. We could continue the program just like we continue other past programs at Metro. We have a Fair Deal program and an MVP program for veterans. This could be a fare program, but instead of providing fare directly to passengers, we'd be providing fare to social service agencies like we do with the ERM today. The one difference between functionally what happens today and what would potentially happen in a future state is if individuals made contributions, charitable contributions to ERM, if they made those to SORTA as a public agency, they wouldn't be tax deductible, right? Whereas today, if they contribute to a 501c3, they would be tax deductible. And looking back over the history of ERM, we've had very little personal philanthropic contributions to the program. It's primarily been funded through grants and through allocations from this board. So we don't feel like that is a significant hurdle or challenge for the program to continue. Once that balance is zero, and if there are no longer funds flowing through the 501c3, you could theoretically transition the ERM and the 501c3 board to an ERM advisory committee, and that committee would consist of the same folks or types of folks that sit on the ERM board today, social service agencies, and they could provide direction to staff to help make sure that the program is doing what it's intended to do. It's a lot to absorb there, but essentially that is our broad framework, and we want to have this discussion before we ask the board to approve a 2024 budget and make that allocation directly within our budget compared to making that allocation over the fence into that 501c3. Kind of a lot there. Questions about this? Thoughts?
Just on the number, the 320 carryover, is that just for 1 year's carryover, or is that multiple years cumulatively that just built up?
It's a great question. That's multiple years cumulatively. So if the arc of the ERM program is when it was refunded in 2021, during the pandemic, it was a slow go getting social service agencies on board with the reimbursement process. That slow go has ramped up quite a bit, and now the program is reimbursing at a rate that is around $500,000 a year or more. So that burn rate, if you will, is catching up to the reserve in the account.
Just a reminder to the board, we are reimbursing at 100% right now, and the original plan was to only reimburse at 50%. We haven't gotten to the point where at 50% we're running through the entire $420,000 a year.
I see, okay. So what type of resistance do you anticipate, if any, from the board? And is there any reason social service agencies would prefer to work through that board rather than us?
It's a great question. I think that our plan would be to first brief this committee, because it is a sort of contribution to ERM. And from a technical perspective, we think it would be cleanest for the SORTA board to contribute within the SORTA budget. Once you all are briefed on that, our plan would be to bring this issue to the ERM board this month and talk to them about this change. We've briefed the chair already. I think that the idea would be to elicit that response from that board, right? What concerns, questions do you have? How do we comprise this committee in 2024 to maybe address some of those issues if there are concerns? I think the only thing that we've heard so far is the connection between the ERM program and this board is important. So how do we maintain, if we are to create a committee, how do we ensure that there is connection between that committee and this body? Is currently there are 2 board members of the SORTA board that sit on the ERM board. So there are different ways to go about it, but I think that's the main concern we've heard so far.
So if it is switched to a committee, then that's all just in-house?
Correct.
Okay.
Does the board of ERM today make decisions on, I mean, at this point, you're reimbursing every eligible agency because we haven't spent the money as we need to, but in a future state where we're having to make decisions about 100% versus 50% versus whatever, or we're sort of running out of resources, is the ERM board who would give you all direction for that? And in the future, would it be us, or would the committee make recommendations to us? Those, I mean, I know that's in the weeds a bit, but those are the types of things that I'm starting to think through. The other thing is, I think it's just important for us to state unequivocally, as we consider this, that this is not a question of our commitment to the program, right? That's a commitment we made in 2020, and one that's important. And so I would just want to be very clear with that board, whatever our perspective is, that funding ERM and those initiatives is still top priority and something we're committed to.
Absolutely.
And along those lines, would we be gaining administrative efficiencies so we could even support the program more?
Absolutely. And this board would decide that.
Although, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to remind us, are we evaluating or at least seeing the audits that are being done?
Yeah, so we are. And
I'm familiar with some of the agencies, some
yes.
of the deficiencies that they have in their audit. How are we
So
evaluating that?
our financial staff and our internal audit department has visibility to all of the transactions at ERM, right? So we have visibility to the requests for reimbursements that were submitted. The way the process works is a social service agency buys fare at our sales office, and then after they distribute fare, they document distribution of that fare to their clients, and then they apply for reimbursement for the distributed passes. And so all of that documentation is required before the ERM committee or the ERM process cuts a check to that social service agency. So that process is fully transparent and visible to us, and we only reimburse when that documentation is in line.
And that's based on our internal audit of just that aspect of the fiscal report. We're not looking at the agency in its totality. We're just looking at what we put in.
Well, we are looking at the totality, and at this point, that's really the only expense that the agency has is past reimbursement, because the administrative expenses are covered within the SORTA budget. So that's why this is really structurally a change, but it wouldn't necessarily change anything at all about functionally how the customers and the clients and the social service agencies would receive reimbursement.
So if I understood your question correctly, the only thing that we would be auditing is our program with the 501c3s. We don't audit anything else
Correct.
with the
Not that we-
agencies.
Absolutely, but at the end of the day, when they get their final audit report, that's when you see how that,
Yes,
our part is being
Yes.
used.
yes.
So I'm asking, my question is, are you having access to the entire audit? No, you're just auditing your aspect.
Correct.
Yet
That's
when
correct.
federal and state put money or infuse money into those agencies, they see the whole. So they see the
Yes.
private side
Yes.
and the public side.
Right.
Because that's where commingling happens. So I'm just questioning, are we looking at the agency in its totality?
We are not looking at the social service agency's finances in this process. We're only looking at the documentation they provide us to ensure that they've met the criteria for reimbursement, and that's it.
I want to come back to the. Sorry, I just want to come back to the point Blake made about potentially having savings to invest more into the program. What's proposed here would be the same amount of money, right? 420, 500 less 80 was 420 in the past budget. You're proposing 420 in 2024. So at that point, it's really not a lot of efficiency. It's just it's a structural change, not a efficiency and more money into the program change, right? Okay, thanks.
Correct. And I think the structural change was just to be completely clear that we are spending money in a way that is consistent with what the law says we can do as a public agency. So the idea would be to have zero impact on the end of the day, impact to the community and to the social service agencies, but just to do it in a way that takes out any question as to whether these funds are put in the right place.
Totally agree. I think to that question, the answer is actually no, not yes.
Correct.
So when the program was originally set up as a 501c3, why?
So that goes back all the way to 2006. And so I believe it was because there were federal funds available.
That's exactly why.
You want to?
So in 2006, when it was set up, it wasn't funded by SORTA. It was funded by the federal government, a grant.
Okay.
So all of those funds came in through a grant to the 501c3.
Gotcha.
And now that there's no federal funds involved, we're funding it with our local dollars to fund the program, which makes it a little different.
Okay.
There was about a 2-year effort from folks in the social service world to figure out where to find dollars for this program because they valued it. And so ultimately, when we passed the levy, this was the opportunity to fund it. Yeah, me too.
I think what we would like to take from this conversation is that the discussion with the SORTA Finance Committee is supportive of making some structural changes to how the dollars flow. There's 100% commitment from the Finance Committee, the SORTA Board, to continue the program. And we have some time between now and the beginning of 2024 to really, we have time until the balance of the 501c3 runs to zero, because if there's any money in that fund, the 501c3 board needs to exist because they have authority over those funds, right? So we really have probably a 6 to 9 month transition period where we can make a determination of how is that committee comprised? What is the relationship between that committee and this board? To your point, Pete, does that committee make recommendations to this body for, policy changes in reimbursement rates, so on and so forth? I think we have time to figure that out.
And we would recommend that members of this board be on that committee, just like members of this board was on the ERM board as well.
You mentioned you briefed the chair of the ERM board. What was his take?
Well, I think it was that. It was that, is there going to be an overlap and a relationship between that committee and this board? And the other take was there may be concern from some of the current board members, and we need to talk to them about this, and we need to assure them that the SORTA board is committed to the program, right?
When we did this, I wasn't here for this, but did we pass any sort of resolution stating our intent to fund ERM, or have we just funded it through the budget annually?
I'm not 100% sure, but we will definitely take a look at that. I know the board made the commitment to fund it.
Right,
I'm not sure if there's a
Wondering if,
resolution.
as part of this transition, we would want to pass a resolution specifically.
How was it messaged during the campaign?
It wasn't a huge piece of messaging during the campaign, but it was part of the informal agreement to identify, like when we decided on what was in the Reinventing Metro Plan, funding for ERM became part of the Reinventing Metro Plan that was sort of agreed to. So I don't know, it might have been then. That's a good point.
There's certainly been a lot of discussion
Yeah.
that focused around supporting it.
Yeah.
And much of that bent to how can we get people involved with it? And that
Yeah.
was the focus of the
Yeah.
discussion. But yeah, we should definitely look back.
Yeah.
And the current fair programs that we have, some are driven by federal requirement, like the Fair Deal. The MVP program is a program that was voluntarily taken on by Metro to provide discounted passes to veterans. That is a commitment that occurs every year as part of our program. This could be handled in a very similar manner, where it's just part of what we do as a business, and it would just make it really clear that we are eligible to do these activities. So I think we have some time to figure out the structure of those things. But from a staff perspective, we don't see any diluting of the impact at all.
They might really like it if the direct support.
Yes. I agree.
Okay.
All right, and we'll continue, and the goal would be to have this conversation with the ERM board and then circle back to this committee with that feedback.
Just clarification, that's a board and not a committee.
Right now. Yeah.
So therefore, we're transferring money to another board.
Yeah. We have other committees do any of those committees make recommendations to our board at the moment?
So we have a
Or like a
steer
rider-
committee,
steer
rider
committee.
advisory committee, and those things. I don't think they make.
Did the BRT committee make a recommendation to the board or no?
I don't think
Okay.
it's specific.
Okay.
Any new business? Hearing none, I'd like to move to adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Thank you.
I propose we move right into planning and ops. We have 16 items on the agenda, so no time to lose. I think we already said the pledge and we haven't left the meeting, so let's move on to the minutes. I trust you've all had a moment to review them. I would move passage of the minutes. Could I get a second? Second. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say left. And legal.
Yeah, that was the last item, wasn't it?
Sorry. I'm so sorry, SORTA Board. We're going to go back. There was one more investment of funds we need to review and motion and second.
Can we complete the minutes action that's on the table? Sure. Okay, great. And any abstentions? Hearing none. It passes. And now we're going to backtrack to a different action item.
And Sonia, I'll move to approve the investment of funds item from the Finance Committee.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Well, we need a second,
second.
I think.
Oh, sorry, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
All right, hearing none, the investments are approved.
Well done. And we'll move back forward to planning and ops. And the good news, remember, we have tons of action items. But there's also tons of good news. So please let us know.
Rapid fire this morning. We'll start with our most recent Silver Award recipients, our Employees of the Month. Adrian, please.
Good morning. Real quickly, we will go through the employee recognition winners for the month of August, starting with Bond Hill Maintenance Employee Cassandra Wilkins. Cassandra is being recognized by her manager for being a team player. She goes above and beyond with both the internal and external customers, and takes the safety of the passengers and operators. And she proactively inspects buses and informs her supervisor if she sees any issues or concerns. So congratulations to Cassandra. Then we have leadership employee Janelle Todd. Janelle is a transit operations supervisor. And Janelle does a really good job with staying on top of the OTP goals for the operators she's responsible for or that are assigned to her. She takes a really serious approach to safety and needs of the customers and is always willing to assist with training of new supervisors and colleagues. So congratulations to Janelle. Queensgate maintenance employee Mike Curzals. Mike is being recognized for his attention to detail. And how he handles complex tasks that arise on a regular basis. He shares great and innovative ideas. He's a dedicated employee, and he has an exceptional work ethic and positive attitude. So congratulations again. To our Bond Hill Operator of the Month, we have Michaela Wiley. Michaela is being recognized for her no disciplinary actions and performs extra work and duties when assigned. And she's got an OTP of 90.7%. And she is great with the customers, creates a positive environment in the workplace. And then we have administrative support employee Tanisha Stewart. Tanisha is a dispatcher for us and goes above and beyond in responding to expectations, always willing to go the extra mile with operators as they call in for assistance and or questions, and making sure there's always coverage when needed with the hectic schedule that we tend to find ourselves under in the dispatch area. And then finally, we have Queensgate Operator of the Month, Christopher Sager. Christopher is being recognized for completion of 990 trips in the month of August, with an OTP of 91.3% for that month and going above and beyond. He recently helped to locate a missing passenger that was having some medical issues with dementia and schizophrenia. So he is being recognized for all the help and work he did to try to locate this passenger, and is being appreciated for his dedication to the customers. So congratulations to all the August Silverwheel winners.
All right, thank you, Adrian. In the interest of brevity, Daryl Haley won another award. Next slide. No, Daryl Haley, recently recognized by the Business Courier. We'll stop here for a minute. As a CEO award winner at the recent Business Courier C-Suite Awards. Daryl, you were more than a leader, more than a mentor, a colleague. You changed lives in the organization. You changed lives throughout this region. We are proud to work with you, for you, alongside you. Many congratulations, sir.
There's another paragraph there on this slide.
Yeah, thank you. You have to read that.
Oh, it was a pleasure to stand alongside Daryl taking a picture with his new award.
John Ravazio was also recognized as a finalist for COO of the Year with the Business Courier. We are also very, very proud of John Ravazio.
Thank you all. Very greatly appreciated. Thank you. Back to you, sir. The Ohio Legislature recognized Daryl, both in the Senate, the House of Representatives, upon his receipt of the 2023 Nuestra Familia Award from the Ohio Latino Affairs Commission for the difference that Daryl, through his leadership and service, makes in the lives of those of Hispanic heritage in our community. Again, well done, sir. And you've never seen so many state proclamations on one table at one time. Check that out.
Can I make a comment about that?
Of course.
Award? I received that award, and it is truly an honor because you are a minority in a majority event. And for them to recognize you, that says a lot about how you introduce yourself to the whole community. So congratulations, because that's a powerful award.
Thank you.
Certainly not to be outdone. Andy would like to take a moment to recognize Tara Walker for her fantastic work and recent recognition.
Yes, Tara Walker from our amazing procurement team has been selected as a Climb Award winner, and this is an award for Cincinnati Lifts Inclusion and Minority Business. Carrying out the vision of board member Gwen Robinson, Tara has done, and her team, incredible work. You'll see later in the program the continued record-breaking investment for small minority women-owned businesses in our community. So this is recognition well-deserved for Tara. Congratulations.
Thank you, Andy. We're also happy to share with the board our thanks to ODOT for the recent grant award of over $1.3 million in 2024 OTP2 funds. These will be used for our bus enhancement project, as well as additional funds for the purchase of future additional Metro Now vehicles as we expand that program in the near future. Next, I'd like to invite Steve Anderson up to talk about some recent exciting updates with respect to bus shelters, as well as December service changes. Steve.
Thank you, John. Good morning, committee. 3 new bus shelters were wrapped, installed on the west end. These are along Lynn Street at the intersections of Liberty and or Ezra Charles. These are adorned with West End heroes. Ezra Charles, which is no stranger to most in this room, but I would be remiss if I didn't point out some of the wraps also depict Jenny Porter, who's the first African-American to graduate with a PhD from the University of Cincinnati, as well as the first black female principal in Cincinnati. So we're excited about these bus shelters. We're just getting started, and if you're in the area, go check them out. It was a great partnership. I have my friend Matt Hume in the room here from the city of Cincinnati, Cincinnati Housing Authority, and these were designed by a West End artist. So it's a great story. Next up, service changes.
Steve, those were funded with city NBDIP funds, is that right?
The wraps were.
Okay.
The actual shelters are from our budget.
Thanks.
Yes. Reinventing Metro thunders on. December will be our rollout for phase 3, a micro phase 3, if you will. We have a couple new crosstowns we've been working with our CPS partners to develop. Route 22, Route 36, those will go from the west side to the east side, in addition to some minor changes there. We had a great outpouring of support for these on our online survey. We had over 100 comments, which is really great. In addition, Route 42 will be transferred over to Butler County RTA. So we had great public outreach and good feedback at the public meetings. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Back to Andy for some more news about how we continue to engage the DBE business community, as well as an upcoming partnership with the Greater Cincinnati Foundation.
Yeah, 2 great outreach events, one that occurred in September, DBE Ice Cream Social. Again, this team is incredibly creative in how they engage with the community. We had 22 DBE businesses show up, and who knows where that will lead us down in the future. The second is the Battle to Build Your Business. This is businesses are invited to join Metro and some of the other major players in the region to pitch their business, to meet contractors, win some Metro gear, and again, engage with us as a partner in this community.
Thank you, Andy. This year, we also continue the annual event of partnering with Miller Coors, and thanks to Miller Lite. On October 15th, Metro riders enjoyed free rides on all of our services to encourage people to take Metro services as a safe way to and from the Bengals game. Related footnote to this, couple of footnotes. The program dates back to 2015. The Bengals have a winning record on free ride weekend, and 2 wins in a row, 2 years in a row of this program for those keeping score at home. So maybe we should do this all the time.
So
throwing that out there. Members of our team also recently had the pleasure and the exciting opportunity to travel to the annual APTA Transform conference. This was also an expo event where we got to see many of the potential new products, services, forward thinking with respect to the future of our transit industry. Also, the opportunity to engage with current partners as well. Very thankful for the board members that were able to attend. You make a huge commitment to the organization. A trip like this is also another commitment above and beyond your attendance and participation. Greatly appreciated. Ending the news with some shots from our recent old timers. They can still call it that. The old timers retiree picnic at Harvest Home Park. I believe by the eye test, the biggest yet in terms of attendance. If you want to know when it's going to be sunny in September, it's when we have this picnic. Always a great day, great weather, great event, great to connect with people that serve the organization and the community with their careers. With that, I'm going to take a breath. That's the news.
Indeed, great news. Amazing people here throughout the organization doing amazing things. So thank you very much for that. Andy, you want to take it away on service quality?
Sure, I'm happy to. If just to reorient the board, if you remember at the beginning of 2023, lots of discussions as we continue to grow. How are we ensuring service quality in what is a very difficult labor market, right? So we set some pretty ambitious goals for 2023 on slide 3. You can see those. I'm just kind of restating what we talked about back in January. Our goal is to reduce missed trips down to 0 by the end of the year. Our goal for ridership was 12.3 million for the year. Fixed route operators, so on and so forth. These are top level metrics that we wanted to drive improvement so we can ensure quality for our passengers. The next slide shows kind of the approach that we took, where we listed a number of initiatives that we thought might move the needle on each of these individual metrics. We then began identifying leads for those initiatives and tracking them, and we committed to the board that we would report back on a quarterly basis. Next slide shows an update on the initiatives. We have 25 initiatives up and running. The report is in your packet. In Q3, we implemented a few of those important ones. One, we've suspended the use of operators in certain roles that are not operating, right? Bus operators that would take ancillary roles in terms of pulling fare boxes and things like that. And we've ended that practice to, again, ensure that those folks are out on the road providing service to the community. We're beginning to educate our workforce on the value of a career at Metro in terms of long-term financial impacts and pension and retirement opportunities for our employees here. And we've also created an operator pipeline projection tool. And what this shows us in real time on a weekly basis, how many operators are in training, what that means 10 weeks from now when they get out of training in terms of service level. And we've butted that up against some of our performance metrics to make sure that we are keeping that pipeline healthy so we can continue to drive down missed trips. In terms of results, it was a very good quarter. Ridership, again, as you have seen and you'll see in the next report, very strong. Missed trips are trending back toward goal. In the report, you'll see that missed trips are back down near annual lows. I don't want to lead the report for October, but that trend continues in October. So we've been able to drive down that number pretty significantly. And that is due to a couple things. One, we have more fixed route operators in the system. We ended September with 512. We're currently at 520, which is the highest number that we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years, if not ever. And that is largely due to a decrease in operator turnover. We're seeing more stickiness, if you will, within our operator ranks. And as the pipeline continues to train and hire and start new operators, as the turnover slows, we start to add to our overall numbers, and that then has a positive result on missed trips. On-time performance continues to struggle. A quick fact here, in calendar 23, we've added over 100 new fixed route operators to the system. John has probably some statistics about how new operators fare with respect to on-time performance compared to veteran operators.
Sure. We've certainly seen that in our research in recent years as we analyze operators and where to best place them in our service. We know that OTP increases with experience. We also know in recent years the average operator had about 5.5 years of experience. Right now, that number has dipped well below 4 years, approaching 3.5 and 3 years of experience. I'm sorry, not the average, the bottom third there, percentile of operators. So we know that with experience comes better OTP. We know our workforce is significantly newer to the organization and often to the profession. So as we continue to increase our ranks, we'll also look to continue to increase the knowledge and ability of the newest members of the operator force.
That concludes my report. The only other piece that I'd like to mention is we've gotten through these 25 initiatives. We're looking at that sheet from 2023. We find value in this process. Our goal is to really update our approach for 2024, kind of reset those set of initiatives. There are some loose ends that might not be worth tracking down because they haven't provided a lot of fruit. So we want to refresh this list and bring it back to you as kind of our work plan for 2024. And it'll be a new list.
Thank you.
Yep.
So the story to sum this up on a few of these key service KPIs is that missed trips are going down because we have more staff. And then the lagging KPI would be OTP. So we continue to add staff, get missed trips down, and then as they develop their abilities, then OTP comes back up. Yes. Okay.
Couldn't have said it better.
We'll keep track of that.
Yes. How are we doing with CPS?
With respect to CPS service?
Yes, in terms of missed trips with CPS.
Very good with CPS. In terms of the OTP story, the morning still continues to be the stronger part of our day. So getting students to school on time is something we continue to be very good at. More of our OTP missed trip issues are later into the afternoon, even into the evening hours, even past the peak rush hour, where a great majority of our work is still done by the newest operators. So we're seeing 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, the OTP challenges, still very strong in the mornings.
It's one of the things that we track. It's one of the things we track for CPS, and our on-time performance, CPS, getting the kids to school 5 minutes before school starts, is in the mid-90s.
This university ridership number, how do we track that? Is that through the transit app, like sign-ins through the transit app?
Yep.
Okay.
Correct. So the university pass programs, Cincinnati State and University of Cincinnati, that program is administered through the transit app with Masabi, so the data comes straight out of that system. There may be students that are using the bus and just paying $2 and not taking advantage of the discount. Sure. We don't know that's a university ride, so this is the minimum number that we report.
Great, thanks.
All right, good morning. It's called a briefing item for a reason. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. I've heard there's a lot to get to, so diving right in. So you heard a little bit of a preview in the previous committee meeting that ridership is up. So in the month of September, we provided 1.187 million rides. That's 23% above our original projections. Of course, local ridership made up the bulk of those at 1.161. And that's also 23% above our projected numbers. Express ridership was up 26,395. That's 18.7% above the projected. And we're on track to meet our end of the year goal. We're 8.5% above projections for total year to date, which is currently at 9.6 million. And here you can see the 4-year trend. We're continuing to trend upward. We're higher than August, and that includes the fact that there were 3 less weekdays in the month of September than there were in August. So again, that trend with school being back in session for the entire month, some events downtown such as Oktoberfest happening in September also contribute to that. So this slide here just shows, this is a slide put together by the transit app using data from the transit app. And nothing really matters on this slide except for the yellow line, which is SORTA. You can see that we're above the rest of the nation. We're currently about 110% or so of our pre-COVID ridership. So continuing to lead. You can see some of the other agencies that we've included on this slide, some small, some large. We're doing great in comparison. And the next slide just has the the average ridership by day of the week, weekdays, 47,500, 14.6% above the projections. Saturdays, 26,163, and Sundays, 20,451. Again, keeping in mind we had a couple large events in the month of September, including Oktoberfest. Productivity is up from last month for our local service, and cost recovery came in at 11.7%. That's 1.7 percentage points above the budgeted numbers. And it's worth pointing out that a productivity of 20.5 passengers per hour would have been considered really great even before COVID. So again, continue to see great trends in the right direction. Our express productivity is also up from last month, 7.5 passengers per trip, just off from the budget by 3.9, and cost recovery at 24.2%. So our OTP for the month was 72%, Express was 71.4, and local 72.2. You heard some of the reasons before. And it is also worth pointing out that this year's Oktoberfest, which I've mentioned a couple times now, had 5th Street closed for an entire week. So it had a huge impact on the main thoroughfare downtown.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry about your vibrancy.
I wasn't going to point it out, but thank you. The next slide has missed trips for the month. Those are again down from the previous month. We missed 1,390. We did operate 97.9% of all of our scheduled fixed route trips. And here you can just see the missed trips by the day of the month. The spikes that you see there are all either Fridays or Sundays, which alludes to the next slide. The days of the week that continue to have the highest number of missed trips are indeed Sundays and Fridays. And moving on to Metro Now, we've added a couple more slides this month just to give you a little bit more information. Ridership continues to grow on Metro Now. Month of September saw nearly 3,500 rides, and our vehicles were on time 97% of the time. That's within 4 minutes of the proposed pickup time. So again, ridership is climbing, and we are continuing to maintain reliability by picking up 97% of the time on time. And here's just the breakdown of ridership by day type, weekdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And the next slide just has some locations with the highest level activity. So these include both pickups and drop-offs at these locations. And if we go to the next slide, it just shows what those are, where those are on the map, the heat map there. I will point out that there is one of the highest ridership places in the Springdale zone is the BMV and driver's license testing station. So I'm not sure how to read into that, if that's good or bad for us. Moving on to Access. Access provided 15,235 rides in September, right on par with budget. And weekdays, of course, made up the bulk at 13,744, and weekends around 750 or so each. Year-to-date Access is at 136,588, and that's 5.5% above budgeted. And of course, the historical trend on the next slide over the last 4 years. Again, we saw an increase for fixed route. We see a slight decrease for Access, again, keeping in mind there were 3 less weekdays in September than there were in August. And OTP for Access was 87.8% on time. That's up from August. And our cost per passenger for paratransit services was $56.56, just above our KPI of $55. And passenger per hours just right about on budget at 2.14, just off from 2.2. And that concludes. If there are any questions, happy to answer.
Questions? Did you have a good time at Oktoberfest? It seems like it left an impression on you.
I plead the fifth. It was a great time.
All right. Thank you very much. So we need to move into the procurement items. Andy, do you want to give us a run through on these?
Yeah, I would be happy to.
Okay.
I'll start at the top, right? We have a number of procurements today. A lot of this has to do with timing, and some of this has to do with setting up contracts for 2024. Start with legal services. We've been running ahead of budget with respect to legal services in the area of labor and employment law. So we're asking for a modification to that contract. A lot more activity in that space than was budgeted and planned for. And the request for modification is for an additional $180,000, which should be more than enough to finish the contract term for 2023. Second is the Queensgate facility column repairs. The Queensgate facility, as you all know, is 50 years old. There are columns that have some deterioration. We did an IFB. John Cecil Construction won that bid, and this would be to repair columns at the Queensgate facility. 1132023 is pre-employment background checks. This is to set up our next 5-year contract with a vendor to provide pre-employment background checks and pre-employment screening services, which is necessary for our HR function. The new facility public announcement system at Queensgate and Bond Hill. Between those two garages, we have over probably around 10 acres of facility that we have to cover. Currently, there is no way to provide direct communication to all of the folks that are actively working within those facilities. So if we think about severe weather events, unfortunately, things like active shooter or a chemical spill at Queensgate, we don't have a way to quickly address and provide communication to all of those employees. The PA system that was built with that facility doesn't work in all spaces. So this would be a comprehensive communication tool for both Queensgate and Bond Hill, primarily aimed at safety security. Next is service quality monitoring. This is what we call secret shopper services in the business. This is a 3-year contract for folks to ride our buses and conspicuously get real-time and actionable feedback to our operations team to make sure that our operation is as good as it can possibly be. And it's pretty common in the industry to employ secret shoppers. Bus pusher vehicles. So we have vehicles that are over 25 years old. If you have a stalled bus that needs to be pushed around the lot, kind of like towing an airplane around the tarmac, those vehicles are no longer useful. And we have submitted to IFB. Kirk's Automotive won that bid, and this would be for 2 of those bus pusher vehicles for $239,000. Onboard customer survey. This onboard customer survey actually began in September of 2023. It was aimed at the fixed route system. As the consultant was conducting that analysis and getting direct feedback from customers, it became clear that access was not part of that scope, and the access folks would really like to have similar data from their population and their clients. So we have gotten a quote from the consultant and deemed it reasonable to extend the scope to include access as part of the customer surveys. And that then exceeds the authority of staff, and that's why it's here in front of the board for $128,400. Electrical services job order. This is basically a task order type of contract for the next 3 years. Again, facilities within the organization have a lot of deferred maintenance. Some of those have to do with electrical systems. This would be a 3-year not to exceed number that would allow our maintenance staff to provide individual task orders to the preferred vendor at a cost not to exceed $2.6 million over the 3-year period. Next is the vehicle digital display signs. So this is kind of the latest industry standard in terms of communicating on board to your customers. These are display signs that would go on all the fixed route fleet, provide arrival departure information, stop level information, announcements, so on and so forth. A big improvement to what you would see inside the bus today. Street sweeper is necessary to maintain our facilities and our transit centers as they grow, and that was a state contract for a new street sweeper. And lastly, 25-year extension of our radio tower lease. We have equipment and communications equipment on radio towers throughout the region that we have to lease to maintain communications to our fleet. Bottom line, it's about an $8.2 million ask in terms of approval. This net increases our diversity spend from the mid $4 millions to $7.9 million for the year, which is, again, almost double where we ended last year. Questions about any of those individual procurements? We have the subject matter experts with us today to answer.
I do. I have a question about this column project here.
Yes.
I was reading this, and out of all the firms, DBEs that you reached out to, only one responded.
Jeff, you want to talk about the columns and we reached out to multiple DBEs for the column repair, and we had one response.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, what was your question again?
My question was, for that column repair, you only had one contractor respond, and that was John Cecil that responded to the bid.
I believe so, yes. And it's kind of a specialty item where there are some columns that are bad enough that we will have to shore up the roof on the property. So it's kind of limited to what contractors available are out there to do that kind of work.
For the column work here,
Correct.
what, how did you put it out? Was it assessing? It was a set aside? Was it a reason it was set aside?
As far as the procurements, and no, I don't believe, it was basically,
It was an invitation for bid.
yeah, it was for the entire project.
Under Ohio law, anything over $100,000 requires full and open competition. So we set it out as a full and open invitation for bid.
And was it only to the contractors that was on that list, or just, or anybody?
We actually have three different sourcing methods that we use. The first is a standard sourcing method where we go out, conduct market research to find out who the vendors are performing work in that space that we need. We target them directly with an email communication asking them to review the information and respond. We do the same thing with diverse vendors. We look at the XBE vendor database that ODOT maintains, identify who those diverse suppliers are, email them an invitation to review our materials and provide a response. And then we use an open broadcast e-procurement system that identifies vendors in specific industry classification codes for the project that needs work. And all of those vendors in those classification codes are notified that there's an open opportunity.
So it says here that 72 certified DBE firms were contacted for this solicitation.
And there were more than 600 firms in total when you combine the certified XBE vendors that we contacted and the firms that were notified through direct sourcing methods and through our e-procurement open advertisements.
Just to do the work. I seen they was having problems with the labor shortage or something like that.
We got a myriad of responses for why there was no response. A lot of them was scheduling conflicts. The vendors that were capable of doing the work just simply didn't have the time to do it. The second most common response was labor shortages. They just simply didn't have the people to do the work.
Was it a wage determination figured out for the project?
No, we did not do a wage determination for the project. We're following the same wage determination rules that we do for every other construction project.
So this would be a building project, would this, because it's be inside, is it a parking garage, or is it a structure inside your parking where the buses be, terminal?
They're the columns that are on the exterior of the facility.
Yeah.
So they on the outside of the parking garage?
Yeah, in the entire property, so the parking bays and the actual garage itself.
Okay.
Thank you. Those are good questions. Any other questions, other items? I'm interested in the display signs. So we're getting those through NeoRide, but what signs are we getting? Why are we going through NeoRide? Do we have to? Tell us more.
Yes. So these are so by federal law, all fixed route buses have to provide stop information for passengers with visual impairment or hearing impairment. The system that we have is antiquated. Many stops are not announced, which is kind of a violation of federal law and ADA requirements. And the main purpose is to help passengers navigate the system. So when they're on a bus, they know when their next stop is coming up so that they can get off at the right stop and so on. NeoRide, which is, we're part of that consortium, other agencies were interested in the same thing. So, when you have more agencies submitting on the same RFP, we get better prices, better responses from vendors. And that's the route that we took. Other agencies within the consortium are taking advantage of the same contract. These are basically 29-inch colored LED signs that will not only show the next stop, but also show the entire route, the following stops, other landmarks, along that route. So, if you can get off at whatever location to get to your destinations. Audio as well is part of that. It also gives us the capability to play videos on these to entertain, the customers, and that other agencies have found that very helpful to, increase ridership. No, we're still at 110%, pre-COVID. We want to make it 130%, obviously. But it could also be used for advertising with geofencing, because it's tied to the CAD AVL that monitors location of the buses. So as buses are approaching a particular, let's say, McDonald's or whatever, certain ads can be played, like, hey, if you go to McDonald's, you get 10% off, or whatever. So it has multiple uses, but the main function of it is to be ADA compliant.
So we're part of NeoRad, but NeoRad did put this out for bid. This isn't, it says sole source because we're going through NeoRad, but NeoRad put it out to bid, so it was procured, through the same processes that we go through.
I think these are really important for ridership, and that's why I wanted to delve into it. So what's the vendor that's providing it, having just been to the conference and talked to lots of vendors about this exact product?
Yeah, it's MPM, Media Point. Media Point.
It's all right. MPM.
What is it?
Message point.
Message Point Media. Thank you.
And
MPM.
it's a good product.
It is.
That's
They
where I'm
did
really
come
driving
here.
at.
They brought the equipment, the hardware with them, so we saw it firsthand. It's been deployed at many other agencies as well. Good product.
And when will these be installed? Or timeline?
Matt?
So we're looking to start installation around the end of Q1 2024. Once it's approved by the board, they'll go into production to start making the signs. There will be 2 on every bus, 37-inch ultra-wide screens.
And roughly how long to get them on?
Sorry?
Roughly how long to get them on?
Probably 2 to 3 months, or about a quarter.
Oh, okay.
Yep. This depends on vehicle availability, but they are committed to getting this installed quickly.
I think it's a significant enhancement to ridership. It's a big number, but I think it's valuable. So I wanted to make sure about that.
Can I ask a question about
Yeah.
pre-employment? And it could be just for the, could be a committee question. But do you, under the pre-employment, do they do social media background?
Social media background during.
Do they check the social media?
No, we do criminal, we do motor vehicle, and credit.
I mean, some companies are moving to social. They're looking at their social platform. And I'm surprised we're not looking at that, especially in this environment that we're living in. Some companies are using it and have found where there was some supremacist kinds of comments made by that person, that candidate. And so some pre-employment check companies are adding that as part of their offering.
Yeah, so we don't do that currently. I mean, that's something we can look at. The only thing about social media checks when you're looking at employment, and a lot of employers do that, you have to be careful about when they're on their private pages in terms of how you hold them accountable.
No, I think you need to revisit that because there is warnings. I mean, I've even warned my grandson, hey, you better watch what you're going out there. So I'm just saying there are companies, and I do know of an HR professional in Indianapolis sharing what she found when she went on a social site. So I'm
That's
just
a good
asking,
suggestion.
like I said, it could be a committee question, but I'm bringing it up here.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
Just a quick question back to that public announcement system. This amount is simply for the installation, or is it for the ongoing maintenance as well for the 3 years, if not longer, or what?
Correct.
They have to use the mic.
Correct. It includes the maintenance and licensing.
Now, do we need to go through these one by one?
No, because since
2 questions. We'll have to vote on them singularly today.
Please.
And then we can put them all on a consent agenda for the full board meeting. Would anybody like to pull anything off for discussion outside the consent agenda?
Only thing I would just like to add, my conversation about the pre-employment check as a part of our understanding. So I'm not pulling it off, I'm just saying I would hope that we would take that seriously.
Okay, yeah, sounds like a good idea. That's fabulous.
Best news of the day, Kim.
Would anybody like to make the grand gesture? Any board member like to move?
And he was talking about doing that job so he could sell all these.
Okay. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say left. Any abstentions? All right, they all pass on to the consent agenda. Thank you very much for that. I think that makes us through our agenda. I didn't see past item 16. Is there any new business? If not, I think we're adjourned for the day. Good job, everybody. Fabulous. Okay, one more committee?
Employee relations.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Like, if you want to leave.
4 of them are posted, and we've hired 22. Can't keep it in mind, some of these are bargain unit positions, so they could be a mechanic, it could be a coach cleaner. So although you only see 8 positions, you see multiple hires because we're hiring many of the same role. And that would be the same for all of the like transit operations, obviously. That's the bulk of those are bus operators. And then same with access, the bulk of those are the drivers. So it's one position that we're hiring many people for. So total about 91 total positions, and we've had about 300, a little over 300 hires so far this year with all of those positions. So the next slide just kind of breaks it down a little bit further for you, where you can see year-to-date, for instance, access drivers. We've hired 71 access drivers this year and 142 bus operators. We've had other access positions, about 9, so that would be positions like dispatchers or customer care center representatives, people that also work at access but aren't drivers, and the same with transit operations. Clerk supervisors, dispatchers, others that work in the transit operation space but are not big bus operators, and then maintenance 22, and then administrative about 37 positions. Next slide, please. This is just to kind of give you an overview of how we are doing against our goal. So if you remember originally, we said, yes.
The Metro now, are they under access?
Access, yes. We had a goal of originally a goal of about 520 was our year-end goal for our service quality initiatives. We have a stretch goal of 535 to get ready for the next phase of reinventing Metro. So we're not too far off from that, our goal being hopefully to hit that mark by the end of this year, based upon who's in the trainees in the pipeline and when they'll be out of training and things like that. So we're at the 520, we're real excited about that. And again, the stretch goal being 535 to get ready for phase 2 of reinventing Metro. On the access side, we've got about 94 in our current head count if you include trainees. And then we also have a goal of about 100 that we'd like to get to. And again, access does include the Metro Now service that we currently run.
Just quick comments about this. I remember sitting here a couple years ago, and this offer to tap in ingestion, what was happening. And I remember all the work that we had talked about that needed to get accomplished in order to get these numbers past this tipping point, and just well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your team have done a very, very
Yeah. Thank you.
DoorDash and be Uber drivers without shifts.
Right.
Are we still doing the bonus?
Oh, yeah.
You're still
Absolutely.
doing the bonus?
Yeah, that probably will never go away.
And to add to that,
Yeah.
a lot of other agencies aren't seeing this progress.
Right.
So
I can't get that
it's
higher. I'm
important.
getting $30 an hour. Can't get fired. Show up.
Right.
Yeah, we've got, Sheena is in the room, and I think you've met her before. She's our new recruiting manager. So we've got a lot of initiatives that we've been doing around recruiting, in addition to the bonus, in addition to our outreach efforts, which I talk about regularly when we talk about employee relations, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Again, this is just a visual that we've already kind of seen that Andy showed earlier with the operator head count. Again, we were at about 512 at the end of September. We're at 520 now, which was our goal for end of year, but again, stretching for the Metro Now, or reinventing Metro initiative. So
Do you have I'm gonna call it for a simple term, demographics of our hirees, the age group, ethnic background? I would like to see what that trend looks like.
Yep, we can prepare that, yeah. And we're in the middle of preparing our EEO4 for submission, so we have all of that data, so yes, we
Yeah, I
can
would like
provide
to
that next time around.
see that.
Okay, sure.
Hispanic.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I would really like to see how we're balancing that out, because that also helps us to know which communities we need to be putting more emphasis on.
Okay, absolutely. So again, this is just some of our recent, in the last quarter, recruiting efforts, some of the things that we've done. You can see there our Local 12 Career Expo, we participated in that. Big Bus Operator Career Fair. If you remember, we had that back in July. There's some pictures there from that. We participated in the YRC job fair that was held recently. If you remember, the Yellow company closed down unexpectedly, and there were a lot of people displaced. So there was a special career fair that was held for just those employees. We did participate in that. And we continue to partner with organizations like Sukasa during their health fair. UC, Technical Career Fair, Northern Kentucky, Esperanza, the Latino Center hiring event. We have a partnership with them. Hispanic Heritage Center, we also have a partnership with them. That's some of the things we did in the third quarter. We still have some additional things coming up, like another Local 12 career fair. We are partnering again with Esperanza. We have a monthly initiative where we go to the Healing Center and we set up a table and we try to recruit and talk to a lot of the Hispanic constituents that they have come through there to talk about career opportunities that we have here. And then we have a monthly operator job fair. And so we're starting to see a little bit of a turn in terms of the hiring and or availability of employees. When we would do these operator career fairs at our garage, we might, on a good month, get 12 max. At the last one we had a week or so ago, we had 25 show up for the career fair. So we are starting to see that trend increase in terms of the number of people who are actually looking for a job, and it's really helpful. All of the advertising and marketing that we're doing, that we partner with Brandy's team on, so they do a lot of work for us in that perspective, in that space, and that's helped a lot to drive people to those career fairs, which we have monthly at our garages. Any questions? Okay, all right, next slide. So this, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a overview of some of the attrition trends we're seeing in terms of our numbers. We are seeing a decrease in our attrition. So as mentioned earlier by Andy, as we see our attrition decrease, we see our operator headcount increase because we're able to retain more of our operators and retain more of our trainees. So on the trainee side, last year when we were averaging about a 40% attrition rate, right now we're down to about a 28% attrition rate so far this year. And so for that, that's a positive for us because again, that's allowed us to get momentum where we were at about 485 and maybe July or June, we got to the 520 number because again, that attrition, getting that attrition down does matter. And so for our progression and operators, so these are folks who have come out of training and they're already in progression or they're top operators. We're also seeing a decrease there, and you'd be surprised at just a 3% decrease, the significance that can have to increasing our head count. And so we've gone from about 17% in 22 to about 14% right now. So that also is helping to allow us to increase our numbers from the 483, I think we're around, to the 520. And I think we'll continue to see that increase as the year goes on. And next slide. And as you can see, just from a trending standpoint, again, wanted to just show as we look at our trend for our head count from 19, where we were about 129 to 90, to where we are currently. We've hired 142. This is big bus operators. We've lost about 90. Now, keeping in mind, we haven't increased our head count by 50 or 52 because there is the number in that it doesn't account for operators who take positions within the organization. So this number just is terminations, those who actually left the organization, but there is also a number that says, okay, I'm gonna promote and become a division supervisor or go into the clerk's office or something like that. So that number is in there as well. So where we see about 35 or so, 38 increase for our current numbers.
I think that the data on the from 22 to 23, Lord willing, we don't jump 50 or 60, but to see the terminations decrease so significantly as well, what would that be attributed to?
For this year? Yeah, just a lot of the efforts we've made around our retention. So we're doing some things on the operations side with managers and supervisors, being more in tune, having more conversations with some of the newer drivers, specifically when they come out of training and they're new on the road, making sure that our needs are being met. If they've got questions, making sure they're able to answer any of the questions they may have. We continue to do things like stay interviews, we call them. So we're just starting to do those. That's a new initiative we've got. We're just starting. We don't have data on it yet, but those are the types of things we're just trying to find out. Are there things you're faced with? Are there things you're able to, that we can do differently or better to retain you as an operator here in the organization?
Is there a certain percentage goal that we are trying to maintain?
In terms of retention or?
Yeah. In terms of turnover, we had a stated goal with our metrics to be around 15%, I believe was our goal. So we're exceeding that right now. And that's, again, why we've seen growth a little bit ahead of schedule in terms of 2023 overall numbers.
Yeah.
And
So-
just from an industry perspective and just what we've seen at other organizations, seeing turnover in the operator ranks in the 14% is a very good number.
Yes.
It's a very good number. And so I think it's seems to be working.
And I'd like to remind the board that most transit agencies are still running reduced service. They're running less service than they were running pre-pandemic. We're actually running more service than we ran pre-pandemic. So this is really exciting, and it's a lot of work. And hats off to the leadership team here at SORTA for all of the work they're doing. Not to just hire people, but to retain them as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Excellent job.
Yeah. All right. Next, just talking a little bit about some of the things that we have as a leadership team have been discussing or working towards for our retention efforts. Again, this is not a comprehensive list, but this is just some of the things I wanted to highlight. We have our Metro Cares campaign, which I think we've talked about in the past, but what that is a Metro employee can nominate another Metro employee for something they saw them do that they thought was really great to show that they care about our customers. And so that is a fairly new initiative that we've started that we're seeing some momentum with. So employees can recognize each other. I mean, we have our employee recognition program. Managers and supervisors recognize their employees, but this is really for the employees to have an opportunity to recognize each other for things that they have done well, either in the community, on the bus, or in the garage locations with a customer. We continue to do work with our leadership development program. We have for our directors and above, we just completed a 6-month cohort where they participated in doing some leadership development training. And so we're doing something similar for managers and supervisors, where we're taking them through a cohort that's about 6 to 12 months. And again, where they're going through classes together to increase their skills as professionals, as managers, as supervisors, so they're better in interacting with their employees. As I mentioned, we do have the exit and stay interviews that we have a new third-party vendor we're working with. So hopefully soon we'll be able to provide you with some exit interview data. We've collected the data. We don't have a lot of data yet in terms of numbers, but we will bring that forward so you get an opportunity to see what. Yes.
Action.
Yeah, so we'll bring that forward so you have an opportunity to see what we're hearing from those employees and then what types of actions we're taking to address it. We're developing what's called a retention committee, so we'll pull cross-functionally from within the organization to talk about other retention initiatives that we could take on to try to make sure we're retaining not just operators, but everybody throughout the organization. So that committee is being formed as we speak. And we're just doing additional training throughout the organization for all of our employees here at Metro. We are doing an updated refresher training. We're taking every operator through a full refresher training, full day, where they get an opportunity to go through some of our DDC, ADA, all the types of things that customer service training that they are tasked with on a daily basis, so they're better equipped to handle certain situations where they're out on the road. So that's happening now. And then we also have part 2 of the employee satisfaction survey. If you remember, we did that last year. Around February, we had part 1, the employee satisfaction survey. So they were just here and did part 2, and they'll be here next week to do the focus group portion of that. So once we've got all of that information and data compiled, we'll be sure to bring that back and share that information with you. And then next, I'll try to get through these slides somewhat quickly. We have our performance management, performance review process, which is everybody's favorite at Metro, the performance review process. So part of what we do as an organization, obviously we want to make sure that our employees perform in their duties. So we look at the categories, the area, functional areas that they are in, and we also align it with some competencies and objectives, also known as goals, right? And so the employee's performance obviously has to be substantiated with comments from the employee who does a self-assessment and the manager as well. And then we try to make sure that included in that are opportunities for additional development for that employee. So I think you missed a slide. Can you go back one? Okay, so one's missing. So real quickly, there are three fundamental categories that we look at: job knowledge, leadership initiative, communication, and teamwork, collaboration, and professional integrity, or EEO, right? One of the first areas we have, employees and managers agree that they are agree on objectives together, right? So they set those goals up, or objectives as we call them, and make them SMART, which I think most of us here are familiar with the SMART analogy: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and then time-based. So we recommend 8. 15 is high, but we do recommend a minimum of 8 that categories or objectives that employees should have in their own performance system. And we categorize them by the categories functional, there's a strategic, collaboration, financial, and then again, the EEO, which is a professional integrity. So the first step, as we mentioned, is to define the objectives. Individuals work throughout the year. So the objectives are held in our Paycor system. Paycor offers the functionality for us to manage this performance management process. There's a dashboard that the employees are able to see. You can do check-ins with your manager. The manager can make comments on a regular basis. You can do one-on-one meetings, and you can kind of capture notes from those meetings within the system. And then you do your development plan within that system as well. So again, it's a pretty comprehensive tool that we're real excited about. And again, our how we rate on a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 being does not exceed, and then 5 being significantly exceed the expectations. So the employee has an opportunity to rate themselves as part of the self-assessment, and then the manager does a rating on top of that to say, well, you rated yourself X, I'm going to rate you Y based upon what I know of your performance so far this year. And so then the next step, the directors make recommendations for a merit increase, right? Based on several things. You're looking at the performance rating. You're looking at how they rate it relative to their peers. You're going to look at the comp ratio being if you are in a job band that is from 50 to 75,000 as an example, and you currently make 60,000, you're at X percent of that comp ratio. So we look at that and take that into account, and then have there been other promotions or previous increases within the calendar year that we need to take a look at. And then the merit budget obviously comes into play, which is determined by Daryl and the executive leadership team, what the budget for the year would be. And so that's all built into the system. And then as a result, every individual, every director goes through and rates their people, gives them a rating, gives them an increased percentage, right, and or dollars, and they have a total budget that they have to work within based upon the number of people that are in their individual areas. So the merit recommendations get reviewed by HR and by the executive leadership team before they're finalized, before the managers are able to have those conversations with their employees. And so we are on a tight timeline. We'll begin that process here shortly so that we're ready to provide merit increases for the 2023 performance period in early 2024. And our goal would be February to have those done. Questions?
Question, Daryl, she talked about management, upper level management, executive management. Do you do the same process, or do you have a different process to evaluate Andy and John? And same process. So it's the same process from top to throughout. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you make the recommendation, I understand the board's relationship with you, and then your relationship with your team. So when you make the recommendation, I'm trying to figure out if the board pre-approved the pot that you have, or is it just?
The board approves our budget.
Yes, so it's already pre-approved, and then you make those decisions based on what's been pre-approved, okay.
Yes, exactly.
Just want to make sure. Any questions or any actionable items that should come out of this meeting? The one, I do want to have the EO's report and just have a understanding of who works with us and for us. And then compare that to the community.
Sure.
And see where we're serving. That's one. Anybody else have another action statement that you would like to, or action plan that we need to take advantage of?
I just wanted to see if there were a correlation, if you saw through advertising and what you're seeing with the hiring events.
Yep.
Okay. It's two. Is there another one?
This might be something that you all have talked about before I got here, but there's obviously a service plan for what the end of Reinventing Metro looks like. Is there a staff operational plan that goes alongside that exists? I mean, obviously number of operators is one thing, but what does it look like from the administrative side? Does that exist? Maybe others have seen it, I haven't, but I'd love to see it at some point. Okay. Yep. Yep. Well, but also like so many of the administrative functions will also grow, and are we tracking towards those things? And, yeah.
Good. Thanks, Pete.
While we're trying to get the hiring
Yeah.
up and had to get all these different
Yep.
elements, under our belts.
Yeah.
To meet those demands, but.
And if you looked at one of the slides, it looked like we were, it's not a negative, but like top-heavy management.
Yeah.
And then you got low level, the operators were a lower number. So I would like to understand that
Yep.
balance too.
Yep.
I think to your point, though, a way that we could perhaps visually digest what that looks like is just like how procurement has it laid out really nicely, and how we get to put those right side beside the goals that we began with. And perhaps we could see some data that shows, hey, these are our intended goals. This is how far we're away from them
Right.
based
Yeah.
on
Right.
that service, or based on the people side of that.
Yeah.
plan.
I just want to make sure that as we get to 3 years in, 4 years in, 5 years in, that we're growing the team. And I see that happening, but it'd be nice to see sort of the end goal there in a way that says we're meeting our objectives.
Thank you for that input. That's great. Anyone else? Another action plan or our need?
One thing as we continue to increase diversity in this enterprise, it is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And I think that we should be focused on it throughout the year, but also turn our attention to what we can do to employ people of all abilities.
Sure.
Thank you. Anyone else, another statement? I don't want to leave this meeting and we haven't really put something on the table. Only one I haven't heard from Sonia? You okay? All right. Anything else, Tony?
No, I don't have anything.
Oh, I did have one question. I'm sorry. Travel trainer evaluator at Access, wasn't that an open position? Have we made any progress on that?
Yeah, the position's been posted for some time. We are struggling to hire. We're reaching out to other systems in Ohio that have done this. So who do they target to hire, wage rate, job descriptions, things of that nature. So we'll play on some best practices elsewhere and see if that can get some momentum behind the position.
Just a question. If issue 2 passes, I know my son is really excited about voting. I couldn't figure out why, you know. And he just said issue 2. So how would that affect us, our requirements? Will it affect us at all?
No. So.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no. I mean, we are, it's still federally not approved
Yeah.
for use. And so because we are in a safety-sensitive role, many of our positions, our operators and so forth, it's not going to be approved. And even if it does pass, we still have to adhere to the guidelines that are set forth by Department of Transportation and the
Wonderful,
FTA. So, yeah,
wonderful, 'cause
no.
my son was not the only one that excited. His friends were and my grandson. So I'm just trying to figure out why. Oh, they so excited about voting. But at any rate, don't forget to vote.
Is that an endorsement, Gwen?
No, no. Hecky, no. I had my experience in San Francisco. I couldn't enjoy shopping. So that was enough for me. At any rate, anything else to come before this illustrious committee? See, my committee is illustrious. If not, a motion to adjourn? All right, thank you. All right.